Good evening. After 10 weeks in office, tomorrow, Boris Johnson will offer the EU his plan for Brexit. Number 10 insists it is the government's final offer and that the UK will leave the EU at the end of the month, despite a law passed in Parliament to prevent him doing so without a deal. A major sticking point so far has been resolving the issue of the border between Ireland and Northern Ireland. The Prime Minister has told the BBC his plan will have to include some customs checks on the island of Ireland after Brexit. With more, here's our political editor Laura Kuenssberg, and her report contains some flashing images.
When is a crisis an opportunity? Right now, Boris Johnson seems to believe.
Prime Minister, in the last few weeks you've lost major votes in the Commons. You've chucked some MPs out of your own party. The highest court in the land has found you broke the law and gave the wrong advice to the Queen. How do you think this is going?
Well, I think that it's going about as well as could be expected, if not slightly better.
Really?
Yeah, because look, this was always going to be a very difficult time. What we've got, basically, is a situation in which the people voted for leaving the EU. And yes, there are many people in all sorts of positions who don't think that was the right way to go. And I am tasked with getting it over the line, getting Brexit done by October the 31st. And I think we always knew that as we came up to that deadline, things would get choppy. And if only we could all come together, get Brexit over the line, I think that fevers would cool, temperatures would come down, and it would be a great thing. So that's what I'm trying to do.
But you're suggesting that people ought to come together when, transparently, you have been trying to create this idea of them and us.
Well, I think the truth is there's no way of getting Brexit done without, as it were, displeasing people who don't want Brexit to get done.
Under the proposals that you were about to take to Brussels, there would be extra checks on the island of Ireland. How and where?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if the EU is going to insist on customs checks as we come out, as it is, then we will have to accept that reality, and there will have to be a system for customs checks away from the border. Now, we think that those checks can be absolutely minimal and non-intrusive and won't involve new infrastructure.
Isn't this just you putting forward similar proposals to what have been suggested that have been turned down so many times before?
Well, let's see where we get to. And as you know, we've made some very constructive and far-reaching proposals.
If there isn't a deal, whose fault will it be?
Well, I don't want to get into a blame game, but I think that the UK has really moved a long, long way.
You really believe that what you're about to put on the table could win the EU round? You really believe that?
Yes, I absolutely do, yes. And I urge you, Laura, to keep hope alive and not to...
Prime Minister, this is not about people feeling hopeful. This is about whether or not the government can come up with a deal with the European Union to protect the economy, to protect people's jobs and livelihoods. This is not about telling people to cheer up.
No.
This couldn't be more serious.
I know, but it's also a question of getting Brexit done by October the 31st and doing it in a way that protects the unity and integrity of the United Kingdom. And we are entitled to protect our customs union, and we are entitled to exit as a sovereign state. So with great respect to all those who are currently anxious about it, and particularly in Ireland, we do think that our proposals are good and creative, but I accept also, Laura, that there may be hard yards ahead.
There are nerves here in Manchester about what might come next, yet the Prime Minister largely has the Tory crowd on side.
Yesterday you denied that you touched a woman inappropriately at a lunch. She said you did. Is she lying?
Look, I don't want to minimise the importance of this issue or people's concerns about this kind of thing. But in this case, it is simply not true.
So she is lying?
Look, I'm not going to go into whatever... when people make these kinds of allegations, they must always be taken very, very seriously. But in this case, it is not true.
Do you worry about what female voters think of you?
Yes, of course. And I think that these are important issues. When I was running London, we had an administration that was very, very largely women-led, and I was very proud of that.
Is the job harder than you thought it might be?
It's a wonderful job. Yes, it's a hard job, but I think that every day we are making progress.
He cannot just bounce his way through this. The Prime Minister's behaviour and Brexit plans are under pressure.
Wish you all the very best.
Laura Kuenssberg, BBC News, Manchester.
Well, whatever the details are of the Prime Minister's proposed deal, a key issue will be the border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. How that border is managed has long been the central challenge of the Brexit negotiations. Our Ireland correspondent Emma Vardy looks at some of the issues.
How does the border work now?
Well, that's easy. It doesn't look like a border at all, just a bump in the tarmac. And it's an open border because the rules on either side are the same. So there's cars and lorries passing here all the time without the need to stop for any checks. But it wasn't always like this, though. During the 30 years of conflict here, the border had militarised checkpoints which often came under attack. And because a large part of the population believe that the island of Ireland as a whole should be one country, ending the violence meant removing any physical sign of a border at all.
What might the border look like in the future?
That's the key question that's been holding up Brexit and causing uncertainty for thousands of businesses here, north and south. Anything entering the EU has to meet its rules, so after Brexit, goods will have to be checked somewhere. But the idea of customs posts are hated by many people who want the border to continue to look and feel invisible as it is today. The Prime Minister, though, believes technology can help, such as using GPS to track goods, but the EU doesn't believe that technology is quite ready yet.
Are there any solutions?
Well, here's one idea when it comes to farming and food. These cows in Northern Ireland, well, they could all be treated as Irish cows, following the same food standards and regulations across the island of Ireland. That would mean no need for checks on beef products crossing the Irish border. But this kind of idea doesn't work for all products. So another option is moving that Irish border into the Irish Sea, having the whole island of Ireland following the same EU rules and regulations across all products. But this would be deeply unpopular with unionists who don't want to see any differences between Northern Ireland and Great Britain when it comes to doing business.
Emma Vardy reporting there. And in a moment, we'll speak to our Europe editor, Katya Adler in Brussels. But first, let's go back to Laura, who's in Manchester. So, Laura, tomorrow is set to be a big day for the Prime Minister as he finally submits his plans to the EU.
It certainly is, Fiona. I mean, look, we've had lots of moments in this long-running saga that have felt like they might be a game changer or have felt like they are genuine milestones in what has been a long and tangled process. And tomorrow is going to be one of them, because the relatively new Prime Minister will be putting on the table the deal that he hopes to achieve with the EU. And he will also make clear that in his view it is either this new deal or no deal. And I expect that is a slogan from Downing Street that we will probably in these fraught few weeks ahead hear again and again and again. And there's no question this is a very different set of proposals than the ones that Theresa May agreed with the EU all that time ago now. But as I understand it, what the government will put on the table in the morning is as far as senior sources in government believe it is possible for them to go inside the political situation, the framework that they have set themselves. That does not mean for 1 second that it's going to work. But this is the path they intend to take. And if it doesn't work, no deal is something absolutely that this Prime Minister contemplates.
And Katya, in Brussels, the EU's been saying since Boris Johnson became Prime Minister that they want to see concrete proposals. Now we know they will see them tomorrow. What's the feeling there tonight?
Well, Fiona, that is exactly why this is a big moment. And I know that we've heard this so many times during the Brexit process. But look at it this way. The Prime Minister has long said now he wants to bin the backstop. And yes, the EU has long said, well, fine, come to us then with concrete, legally operable solutions. And they are poised now to receive those proposals. The mood is not optimistic here. EU leaders worry tonight that this could be the calm before the storm, because they said to the Prime Minister, any alternative to the backstop has to preserve the status quo on the island of Ireland, to protect the Northern Ireland peace process, they say, as well as the single market. So no customs checks, no customs posts, no promises of the use of technologies that haven't yet been tried or tested. And yet that is exactly the direction of travel that EU leaders fear the Prime Minister is going in. And if he is, then big political decisions lie ahead for all of the leaders. For Boris Johnson, despite the rhetoric, does he want a Brexit deal enough to use these proposals as a starting point in negotiations rather than a take it or leave it? And do EU leaders want a Brexit deal enough to compromise their principles? In Brussels, that is definitely not the sense here right at the moment, Fiona. But first, of course, we need to see the Prime Minister's proposals in black and white.
Katya Adler in Brussels and Laura Kuenssberg in Manchester. Thank you both.